Welcome to ProMinds HUB Fireside Chat series, episode 2. I'm Sheila Makhani, and it's a pleasure to be your moderator for today's conversation when leadership means saying no. Leadership is often romanticized as being available, supportive, and solution oriented. But in reality, one of the most defining moments of leadership is not to when we say yes, it is when we have the courage, clarity, and conviction to say no. No to competing priorities, no to distractions disguised as opportunities, no to the unrealistic timelines, and sometimes no to very powerful stakeholders. So the challenge is that leaders operate in the environments filled with pressure, multiple demands, limited capacity, urgent expectations, and the constant tension between short-term wins and the long-term values. So when leaders say yes to everything, the consequences are real. Burnout, loss of focus, diluted strategy, overwhelmed teams, and outcomes that ultimately fail to deliver value. So today we explore our difficult but defining leadership skill, the ability to say no with clarity, confidence, and purpose. So I'm honored to be joined by two highly respected leaders. First, Professor Meng Yang, the adjunct professor at Fanshawe College, who brings a strong governance, strategic decision making, and organizational leadership lens to this conversation. And joining us as well is Lee Lambert, the CEO of Lambert Consulting, globally respected project leadership expert and thought leader, whose decades of experience in execution leadership and stakeholder management make him the perfect voice for today's topic. Gentlemen, welcome. It's wonderful to have you both here.
It is my pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, very nice
Um,
to be here. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. So, to ground this conversation in real leadership moments, I would like to begin with the same question to both of you. I Ming, let me come to you first. When was the last time you had to say no to something important, and what made it difficult for you?
Let me give you an example. In my last project, a senior stakeholder asked if we could add a new feature to an upcoming release, something that is genuinely variable, but very, but outside the agreed scope. It was, I know saying no would be difficult because the requests come from the senior management, and I'm aware they felt the feature was important. Before responding, I gather my team, review our timeline, resource, loading, and the risk profile. The data after the analysis made it clear. The addition would jeopardize the launch date and introduce quality risk. So rather than simply saying a flat no, I frame it as a trade off and explain the impact on delivery and offer the alternative scenarios, which is adding it to the next sprint cycle or have it delivered in the upcoming versions as a part of a production issue. And with that, and show them how the options affect the roadmap. They ultimately agree to drop the features, yet they appreciate the transparencies and the candid conversations. The decision part, the difficult part is not the decision is not the decision itself, but rather the respect of the priorities and the support and being integral and open to the situations. In a way, in my case, saying no is a way to preserve trust, and it was a real challenge, but I managed to get it through.
Powerful example, Ming. I would say especially the tension between, the responsibility and the restraints we usually have. So, Lee, let me bring you in the same question. What was the last time that you had to say no to something important, and what made it difficult for you?
Well, mine is a similar situation that as Ming. I was doing a consulting job for a $1 billion company out of Castleton, Indiana. They had been beaten in the market badly by Lilly, and so their idea was to deliver a new product better, faster, cheaper in 3 years and regain the market share and be back in the lead in terms of what they were making their product for. So they brought me in. Boston Consulting was in there at the time, and I was asked, "What do you think about them? Should we keep them?" That was the first no. I had to say no. I don't see that they're adding any value. There's six people charging, and I don't see them doing much. So we got rid of them. That's the first start. But the big no came sort of about halfway into the project. Mark said, if we could increase the accuracy of this blood glucose meter relative to a hospital blood analyzer, it would increase our stakeholder interest by about 15 or 20%, which was quite a bit. And so they were all set to go. They wanted to know if we could go ahead and rework the schedule. I said, no, no, we won't be doing that. We're on a very, very tight deadline. That it's basically if we don't meet the deadline, the company closes down. And they said, well, yeah, but look how much better the product will be. I said, you got a product that nobody buys because you didn't get it in time. So we talked about it for a long time. This was actually the CEO's idea. They didn't tell me that at the time, but I would have still said no. Uh, I think the problem with it is a lot of us don't take the time to analyze the consequences of saying yes. It's the easy thing to do, no doubt about that. But I learned more than probably anywhere else raising my kids, my three kids, and I had some friends who had little kids, and they were brats, and they were just terrible. And I spent some time with them, and I learned why. Their parents never said no, and no matter what they wanted, they got it. And so I thought to myself, my kids aren't going to be like that. So I've learned a lot by taking those situations into sand and saying, look, the answer is no. But I give them a rationale. But kids don't care about rationales. But I think you have to understand we're here as much to say no as we can. I think Ming hit on it too. The fact that when it's the senior level managers that are driving the we need a yes, it's really hard. It takes a lot of courage to stand up to that.
Great. So thank you, Lee. What stand out here is, this how leadership decisions are really emotional, emotionally neutral, and saying no often comes with relationship risk, visibility, and consequences. So I would say. So Ming, let's move into the strategic leadership lens. At senior leadership level, we usually have opportunities often come faster than capacity. And the real challenge is not identifying actually what to do, but it's deciding what not to pursue actually. So my question is that, how do leaders decide what not to pursue when multiple priorities compete for attention?
Well, that's an interesting question. In my opinion, a leader decided what to pursue and what not to pursue as a conflict, as a challenge, as an ongoing situation that needs to be addressed, depending on the depending on the environmental circumstances and other external factors in consideration with all the internal limitation and constraints and resources. So I would argue a leader decided what not to pursue by evaluating strategic alignment, impact, effort, and the team capacity. When multiple priorities compete, they focus on the work that mostly directly advance organizational goals and protect delivery commitments. Anything, I would say, that create high effort with low strategic value would very likely to be deferred. For example, during the product release cycle, a stakeholder requested a new reporting feature, as I was previously mentioning, that need to be added on an urgent basis. Although it is very useful, it does not support the release score objective and would jeopardize testing and delivery. By comparing carefully values and risk, the leader declined the request and scheduled it for the later sprint, ensuring the team stay focused on the highest impact work that is worthy for delivery and commitment that was being raised. And again, that would also echo Lee's comment is there will always be many things that need to be achieved. But the leader, a strong leader, an informed leader, will focus on the one that plays the best value to both the internal team and the external stakeholders. Thank you.
All right. So, Ming, from your comment, I have another question comes into play that, in my mind that how you see that, leaders distinguish between the urgency and strategic importance.
Well, I will put it this way. I always use a matrix. On
Okay.
one side, on one side it will be looking at the severity of the issues, and on the next side will be the importance of the will be the impact of the issues. So I, as a project manager, will focus on anything that has a high impact and high severity. Anything with the lowest impact and lowest security, lowest severity will always be put aside. And then the middle two, high impact, low severity, or low impact, high severity, will look into getting the inputs of the team and get the collective wisdom and then tackle accordingly and be prioritized in a way that is logical and sequential.
Okay. So, what happens, when organizationally leaders fail to say no at the strategic level?
Again, I would be open, I would be candid, look at the both sides, the value that is being offered, kind of the benefit and the impacts. If something can be considered whether the benefit exceed the cost or the impact, then that will be ranked higher than something where the cost exceed the benefit might be put on a lower priority for maybe subsequent releases and implementations.
All right. So, Ming, what I am hearing is that strategic leadership is much about discipline, exclusions, as it is about inclusion. So, Lee, let's now bring into the world of execution, where the pressure to say yes can be even more intense. And project leaders are constantly, navigating expectations, scope requests, changing demands, and stakeholder pressure. So here is a key question for you that how can leaders say no without damaging the relationship or losing stakeholder trust? What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, that's an important thing to think about. I think part of the problem is the issues where the differential between yes and no. It all starts when the senior level management selects the projects that they're going to run. First of all, they look at unrealistic expectations in terms of delivery. They look at expectations that are not accurate in terms of budget. And when they're all done, they hand it to a project manager and say, good luck. And so you're in a situation where even if you evaluate what they've said, you can have a pretty high degree of certainty that they're way more optimistic than they probably should have been when they defined the scope and schedule and cost. So you have to be, you're in a bad spot as a project manager because if you're going to say no, you got to have the justification for senior level because it's their project. So you better have a good story. And if you're going to talk to the project workers, if you will, they need to understand that you know what the issues are. They aren't in a position to do that, but they trust you as the leader to take them where they need to go. And I've been in a situation before where nobody agreed with me, but I had all the facts, I had all the rationale. So it was a long battle. With senior level management, they kept arguing that they needed it. I said, well, You shouldn't have expected an unrealistic schedule. And so finally they realized. Now, the first time I did that, they didn't realize and the project failed. So the senior level guy has basically said to me this: I should have listened to you, Lee. And that's what you like to hear because that shows that you've articulated the real conditions of that project and the respect that you get from your team is really immeasurable. When they see you stand up to senior management in issues that they know are probably wrong, they really, really respect that. So, I mean, I don't like to say no, but if I say it, I know why I say it.
Interestingly. So, how do you protect your teams actually, from being overloaded while still appearing collaborative?
Well, I think that the thing that I've always impressed upon my teams is that it's a we are one kind of a situation. I mean, we're all in this together. We're all going to the same endpoint, and so you have to pull together. It's literally, I mean, this is not a single person sport. It's not like golf. You're out there all by yourself. This is a group of people working together to deliver something that's important for the organization. I think once you establish that camaraderie between the people, I was had a project written up in a magazine that was supposed to take 3 years. It took 18 months. I had a high performance team. Took quite a bit of time investing in a high performance team. And when the project was over, they didn't want to stop. They wanted to find another project so we could just transfer the team. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way often in matrix organizations. But I think if you can build the trust, uh, they'll follow you almost anywhere.
Awesomely. So, what do you think? What is the long-term cost, when leaders say yes too often?
Well, I think that part of the problem is oftentimes the project manager doesn't have ownership of budgets. And so they have to negotiate for every nickel on the project, and it wasn't real in the first place. And so now we're trying to determine what can I do to stretch these dollars to get the project done. And so you have to look for alternate ways. If I can multiply your productivity rate by 25%, that's a 25% savings right there. And so you start to look at it and realize that, whipping people isn't going to make them work harder. In fact, it has the opposite effect. So I think you have to use the same techniques to overcome that problem because almost every project, I tell people, uh, every project you get, you're already behind schedule and you haven't even started yet. And that's because of optimistic estimates. When senior level pick projects, they pick them by what's going to give them the most deliverable in terms of value, but they do it optimistically. So they come back from these training sessions where they're working out all these budgets, and you find out that they've accepted 7 more projects than we got people to deliver, but yet they want them all delivered. So I think that's where the no's come in the most for me as a project manager is telling senior level people no, and if you do it, be prepared to live with the consequences.
Great. So, I think we all agree what you have said, Lee, and we have few comments in our chat section by one of our participants, Kimberly Burns, that, I totally agree with Lee on the importance of collaboration. It's so true that, the red tape and processes slows the approval of funding, but the timeline is not adjusted. Thank you so much for your comment, and I would appreciate all the participants who have joined us on YouTube Live or over here. Do post your comments and the questions here, and we're going to include it here because this is the entire purpose of having this fireside chat series, to be with the people and listen to the voice, and let's try to have the conversation on them. So Ming, I would like have a follow-up question with you on this, that how do you respond, when senior stakeholders interpret your no as a resistance?
Yeah, that happens a lot, I guess, in the business settings. Again, I would say saying yes too often slowly erode a project's foundations. Overpromising, under-delivering is probably not going to be a good business ethics or business practice for long-term success. You keep saying yes, priorities got compromised, deliverables were not being made, trust got eroded, and the team spirit and the reputation got tarnished. Without the opportunity of ever meeting the project, whether scope, quality, time, or cost. So personally, I would, as Lee was saying, laying out the facts, be prepared, do a lot of research, work with the team, get the team buy-in, and then present a asserted comments to the senior management whether the compromises are going to be. And once that is being made clear, I usually want to kind of double confirm their agreement, their consent, that they really fully understand what the implications will be and addressed it any vested agenda and get a true consent of what they were willing to do, whether it's a new feature or whether it's a new initiative or something that need to be added in the middle of the project. By doing so, I would see by offering responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty, I, as a project manager, continue to be accountable for the success of the project. And in addition, I protect my team so that the cooperations, the trust, the engagement can be sustained toward the end goal. Because at the end, I see it as one team, one goal. Their success contribute to my success, and my success contribute to the entity's success. Thank you.
Great, Meng. And from there, actually, I have one more question which I would like to ask you, Meng. Sorry, Lee, and then I will come to you, Meng, with the same question. And I have the same question for the audience too. Please do share your comments that, how do you maintain trust when the answer genuinely must be no? What do you think, Lee?
Are you asking me or Ming? I thought you said
I'm
Ming.
asking you, Lee. That how do you maintain trust, when you know that the genuine answer must be no?
Well, well, that's a tough one. Uh, sometimes, sometimes you have to say no when you mean yes, and vice versa. I think that the impact on some of the people, some of the stakeholders with a no is pretty significant. And if you haven't prepared for that, it can have a negative effect on team dynamics, on the issues of timing. What I try to tell people, people ask us all the time, and what I tell them, it's kind of maybe it's a little too harsh, but I said, "Come on, man, this is not brain surgery. We're just asking you to do the right thing." And sometimes the right thing is to say no. On a horrible case, I had a friend that worked for me who had a 9-year-old son who just had a thing about riding his bike in this busy street in California. And I said, "Well, don't you just tell him no and take the bike away?" He said, "No, then he'd feel bad." Well, about a month into the year, his son was accidentally hit and killed. It's a hard way to learn, but that's the kind of thing we have to deal with as project people, because we're riding those bikes in a busy street all the time. And if we're not careful, we're going to get hit. So I think it's important to realize, just break it down into its simplistic parts. It's not that difficult.
And yeah, thank you, Lee, for your input. So, Ming, what do you say? How would you maintain trust when the answer genuinely is no?
Well, I'm going to put it this way. So at the usually the onset of the meeting at the kickoff, we would come together. We will come up with a project scope statement. I would go back to the statement because this project scope statement will be the output of the collective decisions and what needs to go in and what is excluded. And that is the onset of the project and its creations. The project statement, in a sense, give me the authority as as a project manager, and I will be taking the statement to execute what is being prescribed. And now that there's a new feature that comes in that, yes, in some cases might improve the outcome, might enhance the benefits, but now we need to go back and see, does it address the original, does it violate any original assumptions and constraints as at the onset when we build the original scope statement? Take a quick revisit, look at it, work with the team to see whether this is still viable with the new feature. Can that be included or should it be really be deferred? And after much considerations and deliberations, if it still impact the current value, the timeline, or the schedule, or the budget, then I will respectfully share the informations back to the senior management, provide the pro- give the two sides and show the trade-off. And Lee was saying, be candid, be open, let them understand the impact, but ultimately they are the decision makers and they will make the decisions as I laid out what are the different scenarios. If ultimately it is still needing to put the feature in, yes, then I'll go back to my team and said this is a senior management decisions and deliberations. Let's rework the project and get it completed, re-baseline on the schedule, on the budget, etc., to get it delivered.
Sounds good. And we have one more comment when we put this question for our audience that, saying no when it is the right thing to do is maintaining trust. There is nothing like, saying yes and you know that it cannot be done. At the end of the day, the project management team is responsible for managing of the project. Very well said, Kimber. So now I would love to open this, up as a shared dialogue, leadership dialogue between both of you, Lee and Meng. So my first question would be that to both of you is that is saying no is a leadership strength or can it become a career risk also?
Oh, I'll take that first thing if you don't mind.
Please.
Even if you do mind, I'll take it first. The reason I think that's an important question is that I think leadership is impacted very positively by being able to say no, by being able to use that term, which has an impact on a lot of people usually. But what I've found is I've found a way to turn that no into a method to build support within the team. If I know the answer needs to be no, okay, then what I do is I get my team together and I tell them I'm thinking I'm going to say no about this, but unless you guys have some rationale why yes is a good answer, and then I get them talking. And by the way, sometimes I've found some things that switched my mind. Because some of the people down at the working level are much more aware of the realities than a project manager is oftentimes. But when you're done, if you still say no, what you've done is you've given them an opportunity. So it's not just my no, it's our no, because we all had a chance to participate. So it's one of the things I use as a team building exercise, but it's really built around the realities of yes or no.
What do you think, Meng? You are mute.
Well, in my many years of being a project manager or even working in operations in other situations, there are many chances to say yes or no, but we all know there's many shades of gray in between. So what I have been doing myself is listen to the situations, practice active listening, understand the circumstances, rephrase the issue, take ownership, share the credit as needed, deliberate, and be transparent. From a project perspective, again, looking at the internal resources, there might be some organizational assumptions and resource constraints, looking at what we could do, explore the external environment, and then make a decision. Again, not my decision, it's a group decisions and based on principles and not politics. I'm a PM, I'm here to direct traffic, to get things completed, to deliver what is being promised or stated in the project scope statements, and that's what I would do. I don't intend to be a politician, even though politics can sometimes kicks in the situations, but try to be impartial, try to be integral, and be honest, be open, and get the message across, and get the issue addressed, and move on, and take on another opportunity as it comes along.
All right. So since we have no comments from the audience, let's move on to the second question in a dialogue between both of you. And again, Lee, you can begin from here. That when should a no be firm and when should it remain negotiable? What do you think?
Well, I think the whole thing, everything we do is a negotiation just about in project management. And th- on this group thing that I mentioned earlier, I want to point out there's a danger associated with that. If you do that too often, people start to think you don't have what it takes to make a decision on your own. So there's some downside risk to that as well. And if you think about it, really, all of this is about risk management. That's what's going to make you decide whether it's yes or no, is if you've done a risk assessment in terms of if the answer is yes or in terms of if the answer is no. And once you've decided, if you still feel strongly about it, you may have to negotiate with senior level people because they've got the peer pressure. Obviously, they're coming down on you. They're very serious need, and I think unless we're in a position where we can stay neutral to the extent that we know what's right and what's wrong, then negotiation is going to be a big part of that.
Lee, what is your opinion on that? Sorry, Meng, what is your opinion on it?
Well, I guess Lee pretty much says it, but I would also kind of add a bit of a context. A no must be firm on situations, whether the delivery or the integrity or the team well-being or the circumstances or the business settings where no means a no. For example, working on a project, it might be there might be some life and death situation, there might be some quality issues. Quality cannot be compromised. Human being cannot be sacrificed in a light way, right? Then for those situations, no is a no. In other situations, whether there are possible alternative, there are workarounds, I would be comfortable to give a yes and then look into all the different alternative, test it out, come up with one that is feasible within certain limits and constraints of the budget, schedule, and scope, and work it out and have it done, presented it, and get the consent from the senior management, buy-in, and then get it implemented. But again, no will not be a compromise for certain quality situations, and that will be what I'll be holding onto as I see as the situation manifests itself.
I think you hit on something I think is important. At the time we make these decisions, we may not have all the information. I like
Right.
your idea of saying, well, okay, I'm going to say yes for now, but in two
Mm,
months we're going to take a look at where we are and what we've done, and that yes may turn into a no. I like that idea because you give yourself some room to really figure out what the answer should be.
right. Agree with you, Lee.
Absolutely.
Project, I guess by definition, is an iterative endeavor. and we can only make decision based on the limited options or facts that we have to date. And once that we accepted the decision, then we move on, then we might reassess and review. Thank you, Lee.
Absolutely, I would say. And then my next, I think, the cross dialogue among both of you is, and you both can decide who wants to go first, and it's actually the most common question. And usually people ask this question a lot that, how do you communicate a no to the upper management, especially to a senior sponsor or a senior executive?
Mind if I go first, Lee?
Oh, go ahead, man.
Okay. Um, I kind of do it both ways. I would have a one-on-one or two-on-ones, depending on the affected stakeholders, and have a verbal conversations. With the verbal conversation, again, lay out the facts, give out the options, and let them make a decisions, looking at the pros and cons and the impacts and the benefits. With that, an informed decision will be made. And once that happens, I will usually follow up with something in writing so that I will put them accountable and also put myself accountable to that discussions or deliberations so that I have something concrete and solid that I can carry forward to execute the consensus toward the completion of the project. That's what I would do, a bit of a discussion followed by a write-up to consolidate the understanding.
All right. Lee, what do you think?
I think a lot of things on this one. First of all, I know for sure that I put my pants on the same way they do. So we're equal, okay? So if I'm going in for a decision, I'm going to go in with two cases. I'm going to go in with a case if the answer is no, and I'm going to go in a case with the answer is yes, realizing that what's the differential is the amount of risk we're. And with the tools we have today, with the integrated logic networks and the AI and all that stuff, I can create quite a sophisticated support for my answer either way. You have to kind of be like you're in a debate on a debate team. You get the pro and the con of the same topic, but you're going to argue it to try to impact the audience. Same thing. When I go in to talk to CEOs, I'm not afraid of CEOs. I'm not afraid of power because I have all the answers. If I didn't have the answers, I'd be scared. But no matter what kind of a question they come up with, I've thought about it. I do a decision tree analysis and decide if he says yes, this is where I'll go. If he says no, this is where I'll go. So I'm planning. And I think once you're in that position where you understand 90% of the battle is being ready to fight it. And that's the way I would look at it in all cases, really.
I completely agree. And we have one more comment. The chat section on this question is that, senior sponsors or executives are interested in how the no impacts the business. Therefore, risk should be identified and backing by the SMEs so that the project management manager's reputation is not compromised. Absolutely. So there's a question, people usually comment and ask about it. So I would like to have both of you reflect on it that, sometimes we receive a word not now instead of a direct no. So, what do you think? Is not now sometimes more powerful than a direct no?
Yeah, more powerful because it can get you in more trouble. The problem with not now is that all you're really doing is delaying the inevitable. And I think it's important to not do that. I think that that's like saying maybe. Well, what the heck good is that? That's kind of the same thought process. So I uh, I don't think I would use that very often. I think it could have a negative impact.
Likewise, in this situation, again, looking at I might even consider a bit of a hierarchy, a bit of a reporting relationships, and then try to come up with something that is presentable with solid facts and then just lay it out and get the understanding across that this is now the situations, or these are the circumstances. Let's use the fact that we have on hand to make the best decision that we can, and then live with the consequences while continue to reassess, continue to monitor the situations, and look out for another opportunity or another risk that is coming up on the horizon.
Yeah, let me very quick before we go on to the next question. I think somebody might have been you, Sonelia. It put is sometimes no, or is sometimes not now better than no? And the answer is no. Yeah, because it transmits a delaying atmosphere. Because most things you can make decisions on, and by just saying not now, all you're really doing is buying yourself some more time to do what you should have done in the first place. So I don't think it is a good substitute. I really don't.
True, I think everybody would agree to it, and we all are smiling into it. So, I think there's such an important distinction. Saying no is not, shutting doors. If we see from my dialogues, but it's about protecting the outcomes. If we see that, so let's
Right.
make it this practical for our audience. And because many leaders listening today may be thinking, I understand the concept, but what do I actually do tomorrow morning? So let's move into towards some frameworks or approaches or the mindset. That what practical approach can leaders use tomorrow to say no with confidence and clarity? Would you like to start firstly?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think that. Well, let's see. What do I want to say here? I'm not sure. Me, you go ahead. I'm thinking about this one.
Okay. Well, again, it's a difficult decision. It has to be made. As a PM, I'm ultimately accountable for the outcome of the project. So I would, for a situation like this, I would rely on my team. I would trust their expertise, leverage their knowledge, and maybe even look at previous project archives or previous records with something similar that have been done in the past. Take those historical informations, take in the new information that we have on hand, despite they may be limited or incomplete, and come up with a decision, look at the alternative, come up with the decisions, and then present the scenario and get the buy-in from the senior management. Whether it's a yes, whether it's a maybe or no, it is something that is informed, something that is well studied, and whether it's something committed by my team, represented by me as something that is viable at the time based on the new requests or challenges or features at hand, and continue the iterative process as the project is underway.
All right, that bought me some time. Thank you.
You're welcome, Fleet.
Yeah, I kind my mind kind of went to a different direction. When I get a group of people together, the first thing I do is hold a little leadership training. I think it's important for the followers to know what the leaders are thinking, what they're doing, how they're acting the way. One of the things I found out as I worked through my 60 years of project management was that to be a good leader, you have to have followers. That's what I learned. And so if I can't get my team to be followers, that's probably because they don't understand my mode of operation. They don't understand what my thought process is. And I think that's important. I think we're much too closed-minded sometimes about style. an approach to doing things like leadership. So I'll spend a lot of time making sure they understand. I don't want somebody leaving a meeting saying, "What in the world was he talking about?" I think it's important that they understand and do the right thing. So I I uh, I think there's a couple of things you got to remember. Uh, it's all about risk management, no matter how you slice it. Almost everything Ming has said really went back to how much risk am I going to expose myself to? And now with all the new stuff, and I use that term loosely, we can determine what the impacts of probable risks are. We can look at two or three risk scenarios, then we can make a conscious decision about what's the most probable and what's our exposure going to be. I think, to be frank with you, I don't think that today our leaders are doing enough analytic thinking. I think they're too much off the cuff. I think project management, you got to stop and think. You're making big decisions, and if you don't analyze them, you'll pay the price.
All right. So, there is an observation, right? Sometimes we see and observe that, our leaders make their decisions, but they are more for the people pleasing instead of, for some purpose driven decisions. So, how do leaders can move, from the people pleasing decisions to purpose driven decision making?
In terms of the relationship between the workers and the senior level, is that your
Yeah,
question?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay. Well, here, let me tell you what I did. When I transferred out here to Ohio, the CEO brought me out. We'd met each other in another location. Well, so I really practiced this. So what I did was I made sure that when I bought a house, it was real close to his house. And he had two daughters that were close to my kid's age. I joined the country club because he was a member of the country club. And pretty soon, people were accusing me of nepotism. But the fact of the matter was, I wanted to get to know this guy. I wanted to know what his thought process was when he was making decisions, because that told me what I need to take in there when I go in to see him. So it worked really well. I got some really good reviews out of it. But the fact of the matter was, it still had the best interest of the organization, but I just had more information to deal with. I used to get people asking me all the time, how'd you get him to make that decision so fast? Well, I didn't tell them all my secrets, but I did tell them you got to build relationships. And once you do that, then you can throw that kind of information out in a meeting and actually do some analysis right in the session. So analytic thinking, I just wish we did more of it.
Excellent insight. What do you think, Ming? What is your opinion?
I would look at three things. For me, as a project manager, I would say 95% is communications, and then there may be 5% problem solving, which is kind of in a way part of communication as well. So I've always been trying to be customer focused, looking at relationship building, as Lee has already stressed, and then also a bit of a strategic influencing. As you're just one part of the team, you're just one of you. You are supporting the team. You are the obstacle remover. You are the supporter. You are the gatekeeper on what needs to be delivered within what time on what at what price. So I always try to practice some sort of a participative leadership. In a way, I'm not above anyone, yet I'm not below anyone. Team approach with effective communication, active listening, building the team, supporting the team, anticipate their issues so that I can remove the obstacle in advance, can bring a lot of support, goodwill, and trust from my team at the trenches, but also showcase my ability to the senior management that I'm a forward thinker. I can practice and I am a forthright leader in terms of delivering a project and getting all the and yielding so that they will yield all the benefits considering all the cost that was being put in place. So try to add value in any way that you can and be ethical and professional because every day you are setting an example to your project team that you are a leader and you also so that they can follow or they can come alongside and become on side and to the senior management that you are a capable person making things happen for the firm, for the department, and for the greater good of the community even. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think what is emerging from this conversation is that, that saying no is less about refusal, and I think it's more about the responsible stewardship. So, as we close, I would love one final rule from each one of you. And if you could give one rule for leaders, when they need to say no, what it would be.
I would
Well,
say, oh, sorry, go ahead, Lee.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, this is an interesting question, a bit philosophical. But again, I would put on a bit of a practical lens. You're one part of the team, as the cliche goes, no man is an island, or no person is an island. Then I rely on the team as much as the team rely on me, for being truthful, open, transparent. So I would practice being ethical, being professional every day, set an example, and tackle the project, if not a week at a time, a day at a time. And just be professional, courteous, and enjoy the process. You choose these professions, take it in, make the best out of it, and showcase yourself as a successful, ethical, strong leader in project management and in other endeavors.
Oh, this is the last question, huh? Let me see if I can come up with something here. Well, I was going to talk about that. I don't know about no or not, but one of the things that I've noticed, most of my career has been working in high-tech environments. One of the things I've noticed is the more technical a person is, the less they want to work in teams. And they're very independent that way. And so, as a project manager, one of the places I've had to say no is when a technical person would come to me and say, "I really don't want to work in the group. I think I can solve this on my own. So I just let me work by myself." Well, that's a no. That sets a terrible precedent. And when you're developing teams, you just can't take that chance. So that's one of the few times that I've ever had to say no. I'm pretty liberal that way until there's a negative impact, at which time a yes may become a no. So I think you have to be adaptive to the environment and to what's going on before you decide to make that answer yes or no.
Thank you, Ming, and thank you, Lee. This has been a deeply practical and thought provoking conversation. I'll close with three, you can say, leadership insights from today's fireside chat that, saying no is not the rejection, it is the prioritization with the purpose, right? The goal is not to deny the value, but to protect what matters the most. And people may disagree with the decisions, but they respect the transparency and the rationale behind it. And I think great leaders do not do more, they focus on what truly matters. So leadership maturity is, I think, reflected into the disciplined choices. So thank you to our wonderful speakers, and thank you to everyone who joined us for the second episode of the ProMinds Hub Fireside Chat series. And until next time, keep leading with courage, clarity, and purpose. Have a wonderful day. Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye and
Thank
take
you.
care.